Okay, let's get this started. Don't know why, but Twitch always starts by saying my stream is unstable. Quite annoying. Wish I could fix that. I changed the bit rate and all sorts because obviously YouTube takes a higher bit rate. But oh well. Okay, so today back to app development or application development because people seem to think I mean mobile when I say app development. Another Copilot update, awesome. So I've been adding unit tests around the planning item pieces. And in doing that, I've used this object builder because I have this static create on the planning item. And the problem is that I cannot set this collection to actually test this behavior. So I'm looking for right now is a way of looking at the properties and binding the backing fields so that I can actually use the backing field to set the properties. This is some reflection juju. It's not something you'd want to do in regular code, but it is something that for a test I don't have any issues with doing. You know, everything is there. I just got to figure out what I'm actually trying to do. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the properties, and this property is one that I can read and can and can't write to, right? So I'm using link pads so that I can get some insight into the actual data, because if using it inside of Rider, I'm going to end up with a mess. Match constructor parameters. Do list. Stop them complaining about that. All that. Use var there, that's fine. All that, make that readable. Constructor. Argument null exception dot throw if null constructor. No, that's not how that works, is it? That's not how that works. Constructor. Doesn't really matter there. It's a defensive thing, because if there's actually no constructor to build off of, that'd be weird. Because I'm trying to get all public, non-public instance. So if you pass this an object that can be constructed through a public constructor, it will try and, well, the only challenge is it would be singular defaults. There can only be one constructor because they don't have the smarts to figure that out yet. And this is the sort of thing that, if it's useful, I would share as a library, because it would be useful for people to write unit tests with. Okay, so I have a property. It has why does okay. YouTube's telling me the audio bitrate on the stream is 0. And The audio is working. Okay. So we get the properties, we got the ones that can't be written to, and that's read only properties, and then so the idea is that I have an object, data equals new, and in here I provide it other classes equals new new other class, new ID equals 1, name equals Bob. Right. I forget which version of the language I'm working with. I haven't upgraded to LinkPad 8 yet. Need to. Although if I need to right now, because it's $100 and something, right? I can use the scratch or the immediate window in here. I just prefer using LinkPad for this sort of stuff because it's a nice IDE. So what I'm ultimately looking to do is use that data object to set the property. So what I've done in this code so far is got the properties of the object. You can see I've got the field, unmapped private fields, got the unmapped properties, and I'm setting the values. And again, they're unmapped because they're not in the constructor, right? And I'm validating that I can write to them. And they're not in the constructor. I haven't previously used them as part of the constructor. And available parameters is the objects, the values that I pass in as part of args. So unmapped properties, unmapped private fields. So the unmapped property being just it's not mapped to a constructor. Private fields, they have an underscore, and I'm going to match them on the name. Again, you kind of have to know about the object to be setting the values. You can't just randomly populate things. That's constructor parameters. That's the match constructor parameters. So that's the right, so that's the actual parameters themselves that I'm going to match. Then this is the actual values of the parameters. And then there's where we construct the object. I'm going to cheat in this one. I'm just going to create an instance of the object and then use the method to set the value. So what I'm looking for here is var backing fields equals from property in read-only properties. Select property.declareInType.get fields binding flags dot non-public binding flags dot instance. Select property. Really? We're going to have a scoping issue on that? Oh, I'm an idiot. That's why. Field, select field, backing fields dot dump. And there you can see we have, I don't know why, the declaring type of the property. But it doesn't really matter. It's this, isn't it? Yeah. So I can go straight to that. I can get fields non-public instance what do I want here? Because you don't know. Let's do this where field. So this is the actual name, right? So everything follows this naming convention. Where the name is in angle brackets and then it's k underscore underscore backing field. So dot field field dot name dot contains k underscore backing field. Like if you ever change that, this code would be broken, but that's been around for a long time. Select field. That's still going to give them. And let property name equal field.name. How do I do this? So I want to do string expression equals that, and then A to Z underscore what else can you have in a name? Not much actually. A to Z underscore. Oh, I'll just do /w. Actually, it doesn't matter, does it? Dot star slash there. And in here, I want to capture that as property. And then k underscore backing field. Where match field.name expression match dot success select new field match. Oh, I'm pretty certain they have to be escaped. To my favorite place. So I want to do that, no, that, property dot star k underscore backing field. And then that's my task. I know that says that works pretty well. Star. So those escaping those invalid. Not enough closing parentheses. Oh, because I put that there. There you go. Okay. Okay. Let property equals match.groups property. So property value. There we go. Okay. Yes, I'm going to do this all in link because I'm being clever, air quotes. Where type of sample class dot get properties binding flags dot public binding flags instance dot any p goes to p dot name equals property and p dot can write. There we go. So we're gonna get the fields, get the property out of the field, the backing field, match it where we can't write to that field directly, right? So that gives us that. And now what that gives us is a pairing of a field and property. So if we do var sample equals new sample class, and then we do for each var backing field in backing fields, we say backing field dot, let's call that setter, property name, setter dot set value on sample. And right now we don't need that other property name, but we can, but ultimately we'll be able to get that because again we'll have the available parameters this way, because available parameters is a dictionary of the name and value. And we can do here just other classes. Actually, no, we're going to have to do that, aren't we? If I want to test it right, I got to make sure it works that way. So, and that's in data. So that's going to be available parameters, backing field, property name, sample.dump. The key other classes was not present in the dictionary. Really? The lowercase everything. Make sure I don't have any so to lowercase. There you go. So it might not be the best thing, but it does work. So let's take that and put that in there. So then that's T. Need regex. We'll call this private static string backing field expression. We're going to test it that way first. That's one or more, so that's not fun. That's okay. And then we'll change that there. Oh. That's T. So again, where we're going to get property, and then we're going to set the value on the result. Look at that. So what this should yield is, and I think at this point I'm going to break these out into methods because obviously there's a lot going on. What this should yield is this should have an object that's populated. And now we'll say it should project exist. Requirements is not in the dictionary. Right, okay, so that's actually, so it has actually set what I wanted, but the problem is I have another field in there called requirements on this object. So what I need to do is the same thing here, right? I need to map these out where, so I need to say, okay, well, do I have, what's prepared property name in this case? Prepared property name is name to low, okay. Let's prepared. Right. So do I have the parameter and is it already in the constructor? Was it in the constructor? And if I do, then it doesn't matter. And that's become prepared property name. So let's try that again. Cannot be converted to type. Oh, okay, so is the problem there I'm passing in what? Passing different, that's you. Borderline 73, so set in here. Debug. I don't think this made a difference at this point. Okay, so my backing field is property name, associated projects, my setter, and my I have the available parameters for it. So the setter requires an I collection of associated project. Oh, and I'm feeding it GUIDs. That'd be problem number one. New. Okay, let's test that one. So this failed in a different way. That's okay. That actually genuinely failed. The rest of them, yeah, new collection associated project. Okay, so they new. What am I doing wrong there? Oh, that's why I'm forgetting how to write code properly. Is there's no empty expression for that. Let's see if that accepts that. Okay. So when no projects are no associate projects exist and associating projects are associated. When passing no associate projects are cleared, right? So that's associate projects exist, so they're being set correctly now. And then when passing different, right? So this one is now failing. So this is where I wanted to be, right? I wanted to get to this test because this is what triggered this. I realized that I wasn't actually testing associated projects. So collection was modified, enumeration operation may not succeed. So here the challenge might be, right? So the reason I'm writing the unit tests around this specific entity is because the behavior I was seeing when I was testing the application was very strange. What I was getting was actually it was publishing. It was kind of ignoring the fact that I had added or removed projects. And sorry for the mic move. It was just kind of publishing all the projects. So the state of my view and the state of my actual data were out of sync. So now the view side, when it gets a list of projects, it should just clear them out and reinsert. I actually don't need to be so clever on that side. So that can change. But this side of things on this object here, this needs to adapt. So the problem coming here is this is causing an issue, right? So if we run this test, so what I'm trying to test here is, okay, I have project ID 1 in there, and project ID 2 is coming to replace project ID 1. And it's erroring at line 156 with changing the collection. So normally that fixes that. Okay, change the behavior. So the problem there was I was just getting a reference to this, so then I was modifying the collection that I was technically enumerating through. So by toListing, I've now created a copy of that, and I'm now going to loop through that copy, so it's okay to remove. Still doesn't work, which is part of the problem. So what I'm expecting to see is that my incoming project identifier is in there, and my outgoing one is not there, really. So let's have a look. So what it's failing? It's failing because it expects that to be true, but it's false. So let's go here and put a breakpoint. And my bet is that it actually has both. So let's run that. Okay. So associated projects. Oh no, it has one. And D53 is the one it's identified with, but the expected is 029, so it didn't actually replace anything. So let's go into here. So associated projects where not identifiers contains project identifier. So it should have removed and then added the ones that were expected to be added. So the associated projects, this is only identified the ones that are to be removed. So these shouldn't have to, I shouldn't have to change the state between these, right? So if we run this again, debug this. So we do identify, those GUIDs are moving, so, which for this isn't a real big problem, but yeah. So we have associated projects, and associated projects has 5B. We've identified that 5B needs to be removed, so, and we've identified that 7.2 needs to be added. So associated projects has been removed. And we're saying associate the project GUID here. So now associated projects has 7.2 in there. And that's 9.1. What? Okay. What I'm going to do here is just so I can track this. Private read-only GUID. No. So I'm just keeping the things from moving, right? I'm making sure that the goalposts don't move on me, so I can understand at a glance what it is I'm looking at. So we need to make that, and we've got expected. So what we're expecting to see is associate projects should contain 6A and not 9.7. Okay, so associate projects contains B7. Where's B7 coming from? Oh, it's coming from me being an idiot. There you go. So I had a colleague that argued that there was absolutely no need to hard code the GUIDs, and in that instance, it was necessary because I needed to validate what I was actually seeing, and obviously with the GUIDs being random every time, that creates an issue. But yeah, it's okay. So they're passing. So we got a lot moving right this second, but yeah, we'll get there. So I guess we get to run it now and see. I think we can log out safely. But okay, so here we go. Apologies for the bright white screen. Here's the code. I remember the password finally. So we're going here now. This should all load in. Obviously, this is now changing because the current window is moving forward. The upcoming, we moved all them around, and the past due has been dealt with. So what I'm testing here is, okay, when I change one of these, what I want to see is that a event appears here and it contains just the ones that I say it should contain, right? So if I go make the UI look awesome, I go in here and I uncheck tenant management and ticketing. I want to see one item come through in the tail. So when I save that, I'm not even gonna validate by stepping through. I want to see an item appear here very shortly, right? Can take a second. And this item should contain one project identifier. But you see how it contains now 4, and 5B is repeated. So let's VS Code this. Format document. So we now have 4 associated projects. So let's go to associated projects, right? And you can see planning item ID 1. 11, sorry, planning ID 11 has genuinely got 5 items there. So let's go and unassociate. Or disassociate. That's which one is? So to get the actual projects, I need to go to tenant management, go to tables, projects, right? So story is 5B. So let's remove everything but 5B from there. Right, so 11, 11, 11, 11, and that's the last one. I'm going to leave that one there so the others remain. Hi Shai, how you doing? Let's remove them, save that. Now, go back here, go in here, and there's no changes. Let's add planning and save that. So again, we expect another. Doing wonderful today? Nice. Good to hear. Good to hear. I have a wonky query somewhere. Car is finally fully fixed and not as expensive as first thought. Still expensive, it's a car after all. Absolutely. Yeah, cars. They're going to do that to you. So this suggests a different problem. So when I call publish here, I have planning item updated. Include associated projects. There's no reason for it. So the problem we have now is what that just published said that, so there's 5B and there's 08A. So 08A is going to be planning. So I added planning and ticketing, planning and story, right? Yeah. But it added it onto the list and put all the others in there still. So either I've got a join that's wonky, but the database table, so the database table for associated projects, right? 11 only has 2 records and it's the correct ones. So this agrees with what the UI says it is, but when it publishes more. It's as if it's publishing all these or some of these. So let's save that. We've added tenant management on there. Okay, what does planning item associated items contain? Associated projects is 7. I've got a wonky join somewhere, haven't I? Because it knows there's only 3 here. So my infrastructure, associated projects has foreign key planning item ID. Planning item. Has many associated projects with 1 planning item. has foreign key planning item ID. Yeah. So how is that 7? If the foreign key is a planning item ID. Let's remove one. So go back here. Right, let's remove one and see what that changes. Let's remove story, save that. So before I go and hover over that, it removed story. So the database says there's only 2, which is correct. My planning item has 7 associated projects. What? Five five six nine five eight seven. 5569587. So the database says there should be 2, but that's spec. So the spec is set to load include associated projects, where the planning item identifier. So this is the this is to include them so they don't get so you don't have to lazy load them. But nothing's new there. Oh, nice. That flags them. Okay, so that keeps an eye on that. Okay, nice. Oh, nice. So 5B OFC 729729. Why 5B? Well, 5B is okay. 085 and 729 are the 2 that are actually associated. So 22, so it's including 2116. They're records that are gone. Those records don't exist. How is Entity Framework caching them? I guess I get to learn about caching today. So hey Apex, thank you very much for the log. Ah, okay. It's dark enough in this room right now. Actually, it's a good point. It's dark enough in this room right now that I should probably have a light on. Does that hurt? Yeah. So the records in this database are not cached. Let's stop running that. So if we restart that now, right? Let's load that. Let's go to planning items over here. 11 is not 11, by the way. So, because again, these are internal IDs. These are publicly shared IDs. So it's whatever. Yeah, there you go. So it's got planning items too. Okay, so that now has loaded the right ones. So it knows there's 2 associated projects. So when I get over here now, and refresh, tenant management and planning. Okay, so make the UI look awesome. Now agrees. It happens. It happens to be 11. It's not always 11 though. But there's 11 and 11 planning item IDs for 2014 to so 2 and 1. So that's okay. 2 and 1. Planning and tenant management. So they agree now. But now, if I remove, so let's go put that breakpoint back. Let's make sure that breakpoint's here again. If I remove planning, and save that, right? Planning has not been removed. Planning has been duplicated. That is not right. So I removed planning there. Why did it think that needs to be added? That's really weird. So that's saying 1. Okay, I'm running it again with that there so that I know, because the event's going to fire. The event's going to pull up the right information and not that duplicated information. So now the state matches what I think it should match. So I'm just trying to make sure that the states of the systems align so that the testing I'm doing isn't against bad data. So we're going to add story and save. Okay, so our identifiers are 729 and 5B3, right? So 729 and 5B3 is tenant management and story. Okay, we currently have 085. What? Have I got some mixed up ID somewhere? Because right now we have 085, which is planning. I removed the wrong one. Yeah, I've got a... yeah, anyway. So projects to remove, it should remove associated projects. hold on. I think I know what this is. So when we in the command for update planning item, right? We load entity by identifier planning item. We call update planning item, which we do in here. There we go. That's why. So the problem with that is we have no specification that includes associated projects. We need to include those associated projects. That's going to be the issue here. So you see how we've got this planning item by identify with requirement spec, right? This is a bad name, but it includes these things. They're not included. So when I load the planning item up, it's got 0, so it's always adding, which is, so whether I'm not determining the remove and add. I've verified the behavior in the unit test, but I haven't been able to verify. This is an integration test essentially that I need to do. So this lives in planning items application specifications. I can't have this spec live in this service. So specifications, planning item by identifier with details spec. So this is a specification that returns a planning item, and it returns an single result specification of planning item. That's just telling the underlying stuff that it's it can be returned as a single, and then why did I do that? Oh. It doesn't really matter. I know what it is. Query.include requirements.include associated projects where p.identifier plus identifier. Right, so I'm loading that up. Now in here, this needs to be planning item with detail spec. I don't want, so that offered me the other spec there, but I don't want that dependency. I shouldn't have that dependency, right? Because that would be the wrong direction, because the domain should not go out, even though it offered me that. And that's the problem with the toolings, right? Because the tooling provides you the ability to just say, oh yeah, include that. And it won't necessarily break anything, but it will break the intended directionality. And that's something that as a developer working as part of a team, you've really got to keep an eye on those things, because there's not an easy way to enforce it. There are I've watched some of Milan's videos, and there is some architecture tests I could create that would enforce, oh, you have a dependency in the wrong direction, right? That might be worthwhile investing in if I'm working as part of a bigger team. Huh. That's interesting. I'm having my employer advertise to me on LinkedIn. Fun. Okay, so with that done, this should now be a little bit more ready. So the problem here is that what I actually want here, I think, is 729, because I think what state was it left in? So I said planning was the one on it. So planning is 085. 085, okay. So associated projects, project ID. So the view database contains the projects, whereas the planning items doesn't contain the projects, and that's because I don't need the projects. I don't care about the projects in here, other than they're a linking object. So I only need their public identifiers. Over here, I actually do kind of figure that out and work and store the projects, because this is the view side of things. So yes, I'm replicating data in places, but I'm actually giving different perspectives, and I do like this view design. It is working pretty well for me. I'm happy with it. So what we should see now is if I go to domain entities planning item, so my breakpoint's in place. So if I add another item in here and save that, we should hit our first breakpoint. Associated projects should now be populated. Right? So now we've got no projects to remove, no projects to add. Oh, one project to add. We should add that project and run. Do we leave the breakpoint in place? So now associated projects, there should be 2. Yeah, we get here, there should be 2 associated projects. I like how it's remembering the flag that I set. That's pretty cool. So we throw that. And now we go over to associated projects here, and there's 11 and 4, so that now matches. So planning and storage should still be there when I go back. If I remove story and include tenant management, here's a test. We get to our breakpoint. We have 1 project to remove. One project to add. We should have 2 in there still. We should have 2 here. Oh no. I need to take a quick break. I'll be right back. I'm back. Sorry about that. Yes, dawning realization that I needed to get rid of a lot of stuff, and the recycle truck was down the street. So my laziness. How you doing, Apex? So why is this? So this is breaking things, because this is now going to publish everything. So 202, 2225, and 226 are going to get published, but 225 is gone. It's okay, I forgive you. I'm back to you after going. Nice. Good morning, One Line. How you doing? Oh no, they're actually behaving. They were curled up on the couch together. They're behaving today after eating their fair share of plastics yesterday. They got into something. They knocked a box over and chewed the contents. So that was not fun. So why is Entity Framework? Oh, this is an Entity Framework. This is PEBCAC. This is where integration testing would this would not be found in unit testing at all. This is a pure integration testing problem. And I'll show you why, because I know exactly what's causing this. How do I draw this? Reset the canvas, confirm. Okay, so let's draw some boxes. So API goes to application, goes to the main service. So normally I have, this is a little bit, this isn't going to necessarily draw this correctly, but when I send a request into the API, I have the application layer. The application layer, if it does change any data, it fires events on committing to the database. So the way that works is I have an entity and it has domain events. When I change the state of the entity, right, its domain events get stored in a list. When I commit to Entity Framework, when I save, so whether it be a transaction or I add or whatever, only when that gets put into the database does that actually trigger anything. So there's actually the interceptor in my shared kernel, domain event publishing. So this is on saved changes. So this is, the database has got the changes, therefore you're safe to go off and publish these events. And these are mediator notifications. And the reason I do it that way is because I don't want those events to change the state or to publish something to Kafka too soon. If I publish to Kafka, I could publish the wrong state because the actual nothing's been committed, and if that fails or rolls back, then I've published the state to Kafka that I then have to correct somehow, right? So the system can fall out of whack. So I've just explained the problem, right? The issue I have here is in this domain service. This and this are happening at the same time. So this publish happens regardless of whether this is saved right now. it's not in reaction to an event changing in here. And I did it this way because I did it as a domain service, so I could explicitly do this. But now I'm thinking what I need to do is in add domain event, validate that no event of that type exists before I add it. So if domain events dot contains, and the problem is this is not going to work because domain event doesn't specify equality. What I'm thinking is I actually want to reverse this a little bit and remove this so that only when I save to the database, because what's happening is this update async is happening, but that should save changes, which should commit to the database. So this publish should be disconnected. That's why I did it after update async. I thought I'd switch these two, right? So if I'd switched these two and published this before I'd updated, then yeah, the database state would be invalid. But this await should block until this completes. But this is as if the state of the database hasn't been handled yet. Because if I run it again, we'll see 2, right? Because it knows the event needs to be fired. It's got this still not processed, right? So if we go to notification outbox, this event won't be processed, right? So it'll fire this again to say, oh, this planning item got updated, by the way, right? So this is all the domain events, and this is all the integration events that fire. And these are queues. These are actual outboxes to give me some resilience, which is perfect for this. So this is as if this doesn't actually commit to the database yet. So I can test that. Try. No. Using bar. That's not a thing. Where are you? Use cases. Tenant management. So the tenant management application does have a transaction, and that is because the several of these things combine together, and this allows me, and this again is why these notifications are triggered on domain events, because I don't want them to fire too soon. Because if I just leave if I leave the normal behavior in place where they fire the moment that I call save changes, sorry, no, if I left the behavior I used to have in place where I would publish the events, let's try this. Let's just try this, and for my understanding, let's see if this works. Transaction complete. Let's see if that changes the behavior at all. So the first one will go through. That's fine. That will keep the system state intact now. But if this works, then I really think I want to change the model a little bit to try and trigger a domain event. So we should hit that breakpoint. Oh, we didn't get that. Okay, so we got that. That event should be dealt with. Yeah, so our state should be valid. Okay, so now go back here. We've got planning and tenant management. Now let's add story. Save that. Let's remove that one. Let's just trust that that works properly at this point. After a little while, we should get, because it runs on a timer, right? So it runs on a cycle. So we should have another notification eventually here. He says. What? Let's remove story. I dislike this sort of problem where it's it's disjointed. So we have 2 coming in. So we should have 1 to remove. Yeah. And 0 to add. Yeah. But we didn't add the notification. It's as if it's now no longer bothering with this by adding that transaction in there. Yeah. So it published the first integration event when it did this, when it handled the state process. We have 2 in there, that's correct. But it's like that transaction's now just, okay, I'm done. That's weird. I think the right thing to do anyway is to do this planning item updated internally. So domain events shouldn't be triggered. I mean, domain events can be triggered by domain services. That's the problem. But this directly publishes it. This queues it and publishes it when this object is saved to the database, right? So it holds off on this component. And I think that's the problem. But again, I'm not... That update async is bugging me because that should happen. That shouldn't happen in parallel. Actually, am I not seeing... I'm just getting planning item updated. Assign user should fire planning item assigned. I should get an update. I should get a planning item review date updated. Those should be domain events as well. Like these I was getting. That's part of the problem. I'm not getting the things I think I should be. Every time I updated there. Oh, I haven't changed them. I haven't changed them. Torp. Never mind me. So a way to do this would be to do add domain event, new planning item, updated, right? This is perfectly valid. And then identifier. Then you would do that in here and here and there and there. That's different. That's different. They're different events entirely. So anything that changes the state of the planning item would do the planning item updated, which means that I don't always have to publish an actual domain event. These right now are not necessary. I could remove these entirely. If I do it this way, this works from a from a behavioral standpoint, because now what I do is I don't need to do this, right? And when I update, it will publish that event regardless. And it should only do that when those changes have been saved to the database, which means when that loads, it should then pull the right model. The challenge there is when I do that domain event, I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to publish several of them, which means I'm going to publish a bunch of them. And their notifications immediate. So when they actually get invoked by the queue, they'll take the state of the database and publish that event. So if I update the review date and I update the user and I update the description and I update the associated projects, I'm going to get 4 of them events, and I don't want that, right? I can't specify that they're records because I think when were records introduced? C#7. They're new. No. If I do public record sample data period identifier, I do var data1 equals so can't iDomain event is an iNotification. But I need to do an iEquatable to give it, to be able to say, is it in the list already? Because it's going to be a different instance, right? It's going to be a different instance of that record. My thought is if I make everything records, doesn't that give me... Sorry for the flickering. Period.pass. So if I do var data1 equals new sample data ID, var data2 equals new sample data ID, data1 equals data2. Done. True. But if I make that a class, primary constructors don't exist in .NET. in C#7. CTOR. That's false. So if I make everything records, that's good. But it'd have to be that's not really what I want to do, because the events are. Oh, let's evaluate that before I say that's not really what I want to do. There's those. So these are events in this context. So everything's a domain event. And I'm pretty much doing that all the time. So making them immutable is not. Now, can I specify that as a requirement, though? This is going to break a lot of stuff, because I'm going to have to go through and everything has to become a record. Can I say? I don't think I can specify that, can I? So because I can't specify it, right, public base I domain event. It's just a signal class in this case. I domain event. I domain event. Public void add domain event. I domain event. So right now I just do that. Bar bracket equals new things track events. Bracket add domain event. Yeah, 1. I know it's not the normal style, but bracket dot dump. Yeah, that helps. So we got duplicates there. If domain events that contains, if not, right. So if they're records, that works fine. So they implement equality. If I have public class another event happened, which is an iDomain event, it has public period identifier public and then we do identifier equals identifier. Right. New another event happened. ID var data 4 was new. Another event happened. ID, and we do the same thing, right? Tracker to add domain event. Data 3. Tracker to add domain event. Data 4. That's going to duplicate. Now if I implement, so my question is, do I implement iEquality here? Because again, an event, so I can have a class or a record. If it's a record, I get equality. But basically, if I say that, how do I do this now? Is it iEquatable or iEqual? iEquate. Right. Yeah. So it's going to want to implement that no matter what, which starts to change the record. And there's the what does contains use? Hey, Captain Fubar, how you doing? Doing good. Been in the technicals of the application today, trying to make sure the behaviors are correct. So I've implemented some unit tests. So there's a what I've been working on recently is this getting the associated projects list aligned, and I noticed that I had some issues with doing that. So I was writing some tests. Ian, how are you doing? Can we update JetBrains license through toolbox through here? Oh, thank you for the gift sub. Really, that appreciate that. It doesn't look like I can do that through here. Deflux, how you doing? Thank you for the gift sub to Captain Fubar as well. Appreciate it, anonymous gifter. How you doing, Deflux? Cooking, bro. I have a laptop and desktop. I don't want to go through all IDs. But if you're signed into the IDE and your account is updated, you shouldn't need to do the licensing. Melon, thank you very much for the raid. How's it going? What were you working on today? Doing great. Added a bunch of features to my microservice scaffolding tool. Nice. Nice. I saw. What's YouTube? You're confusing me, defaults. How you doing? Okay. And I apologize, Melaneth. I said Melaneth. So many bugs. Bugs are good to fix. Bugs are definitely good to fix. I'll have to give that a check out though. Microservice scaffolding tool. So, welcome raiders. If you're new to this stream, I am working on what I refer to as an Agile platform, or an Agile management platform. Basically, what I'm trying to build is a system to help developers avoid having to go near any management software. Tools like Jira, etc. We spend a lot of our lives in, but we don't actually care about most of what's in there. It's not for us as developers, it's for management. So what I'm trying to build here is an application to allow product management to put together requirements and build stories in a way that allows them to keep an eye on status, so they know, here's things that I need to review, here's things that are currently in this week to work on, and here's things that are in the future that I've got set as a review date, so they can constantly see where things are and how that worked upon. And what I'm working on right now is the associated projects. These are just kind of labels that are attached because, the product management shouldn't have to worry about which bucket it fits in as they're planning. So to kind of take off the weight of them. So I've been building this for several months. It's built out as a distributed system. There's lots of little pieces. I wouldn't say microservices. This is a modular monolith, more precisely. Each component of the system breaks down into these individual components. Are you planning on using any kind of DB caching system, e.g. Redis, or completely depend on Kafka messaging? So the way the application is structured, not that way. Load from file. The way the application is structured, and I keep loading up the wrong one, is, everything comes in through the right APIs and gets published to Kafka and gets put in a view database and then is read using GraphQL from there. So Redis is actually already in there. I use Redis for actually event subscriptions in GraphQL. So that I allow you to push notifications down to the client through GraphQL right this second. So I can tell the client, hey, this happened. And that actually uses Redis for that piece. I probably would look at using Redis for the view side of things specifically. The Kafka is being used for integration events right now. So if I update an object, it publishes the integration event so that I can consume that in multiple places. Again, later on down the line, there'll be things like search. There'll be separate systems that require that data. If I add a project, the view database needs that. Everything gets published that way. So that's how I'm differentiating right now. But yeah, Redis is definitely something I want to look at. In terms of the caching, it's funny because I'm actually the problem I'm suffering through right this second is looking like it's being cached, and I don't think it. I think it's a timing problem. Dan, hello, how you doing? Should be able to shout out, Dan. So, my general thing on this stream is, if you have any questions, thoughts, or opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. If I don't know the answer, then I don't know the answer. But I'm not sitting here trying to do this and saying, hey, I know everything, watch how to do this properly. I'm open to opinions. I'm not open to criticism directly, unless that criticism comes with, oh, by the way, you can do this, and here's why you should do this. So I can at least evaluate that. But yeah. Fun. I just added DB index creation in my tool, and next is generating the GraphQL bindings automatically. It's mostly Ruby right now. I'm focused on Rails, but I'm going to add a lot of web frameworks as I find time. Vue.js soon, since I'm nearly done with the major goals for Rails. Nice. I haven't used Ruby in a long time. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm using Angular for the front end on this piece, and the application is going to be quite. This is tiny. The functionality I've got in so far is so tiny, but I do support logging in, registration, all those things. There is a lot of stuff going on. in here. Ever thought about having a distributed DB as close to the logic, e.g. SQLite with a framework like LifeFS, less of a monolithic DB approach? I haven't looked into that sort of stuff. I'm not sure I follow quite what you mean as close to the logic. Right now, individual application components have their own databases, right? So there's no limit on what storage technology I actually use for individual components of the system. So again, if I put search in place and I have Elasticsearch, that's a completely different thing, right? It's going to have its own storage. These are in the one database server right now for development purposes. I did actually have tickets running initially on Couchbase, sorry, not CouchDB, because I think using the right storage technology for the job is necessary, right? Or well advised, I'll say, because what you shouldn't be doing is trying to fit everything in. It's like square peg round hole, right? A lot of schemas, a lot of SQL schemas evolve badly because they try to solve too many problems in one place. And one of the benefits of doing this form of system is that I can have these components of the system broken out, and they only care about the data they care about. They don't have to care about all the rest of the data, and their schema can be optimized. And again, most of this schema is just right. They only care about what they need to store. The data there is responsible for making decisions off, etc. They event out everything else. So it is there is an advantage there. How is Couchbase different than CouchDB? I think they were formed from the same core originally, and then they diverged, and Couchbase doesn't like being confused with CouchDB. But I think there is some overlap there early on, but they are different products. CouchDB plus PouchDB is amazing. Yeah, I haven't really looked at the stuff like that. With SQLite, you could have the DB on the same server as your API logic. SQLite I'd be configured. Well, SQLite is a file distributed. If I need to scale these databases out, and again, I'm not. This is something I'm developing as if it is a real product. I do intend to take it that far. Well, SQLite is just a file on the file system, right? It might be able to cope with a lot of throughput, but yeah. But then you lose some resilience as well. You can lower the cost, but you lose resilience because then, yeah. Postgre plus Mongo. Nice. Make Redis absolutely necessary. I mean, Redis for this case, Redis right now is again only used in the view component, right? So I'm using GraphQL with Hot Chocolate, and Redis is included because I'm storing subscriptions in my Redis DB, right? So I think I can actually look at the Redis DB. Yeah. Can't remember how it's configured. That it? Maybe not the subscriptions, but yeah, the Redis DB is just it's not storing very much. And again, I'm only using it for subscriptions to the GraphQL notifications piece. So when I push a change, I can actually tell the client, hey, by the way, this object changed. So what I was working on then, as you joined, by the way, was I'm looking at how to deal with my events. So my domain events get published when I change a domain object. this is not a DDD system. I'm not trying to get into that realm. It's just that is the common term used by people developing using this style of architecture. So I'm trying to at least align a little bit. If I use records, I get equality, so I can put something, I can do this, right? I can do it contains. If I use classes, I lose a little bit of that flexibility because I can't, they're not, they're mutable and they are not compared by their values. So records do come with some advantages here. But can I support a domain event being both? That's what I was after. I was after what does CouchDB is a JavaScript CouchDB syncable text, so you can support disconnected operations, sync back up later. Wow. I wish some of this technology existed when I was developing mobile apps in the early 2000s. So what does contains a simple business object that implements equals I-equatable, right? So if I put I-equatable on the domain event, right? Right, then that's going to complain there because that's to implement that. So to implement that, I have to do that and override that behavior. If I put it here, right, return identifier equals other by identifier. That still doesn't work. That's interesting. Contains does not just use. So the contains documentation. The following example demonstrated contains and exists on a list that contains a simple business object that implements equals. Shouldn't have to override anything. You got to override the default equals. Apex, thank you very much for hanging out. Appreciate it. Have a great day. If opt is happened. So I have to override equals. I don't need I-equatable there. There's no way of enforcing that. That's the problem. But it's not override. So that's just good practice. You go override, get hash code. Because I can't enforce that a type is a record. So the the challenge there is on my entity, I have everything is a domain entity, an entity base, right? And on entity base, I have add domain events. What I want to do is say if not domain events dot contains domain event, then add. So this way, what I can do is I can trigger the same event in the same set of changes, and it will match on the right thing. If these are records, this works fine. But as classes, I have to override the equality. So the challenge there would be how to enforce that. You can't specify that the T is a record, right? I can't specify that. But what this would allow is when I do this, I can add planning item updated, add planning item updated. I can trigger this event on all of these, but only trigger it once overall. I don't need to tell it to do it multiple times. And that way, any change to the object will trigger that event, and then we'll notify when it saves that that should be now applied. What's happening right now is that event is firing while the data is in a weird state. And as far as I'm aware, Entity Framework does not cache by default, so that's going to be the challenge. So what I was experiencing was so in my domain service here, what I had was this. So I go and apply all the changes. Then I update inside should do a save changes, which should commit to the database. If there are any domain events, they should be published at that point, right? But then I turn around and publish my own domain event, right? Which in the domain service is not a bad thing, right? I shouldn't have to worry about that. But what I'm seeing is in the handling of that, so when that planning item updated event occurs, when I get here, the state of this object now, when I load it back out using the specification, is actually all the values that have been removed and the new items that have been added. So it's like the database, it's pulling the data as it's currently stored. It's like this is in process and the repository is the same repository, and it hasn't flushed those changes. But it should have done. So the right thing to do here is to make sure that I don't actually have to deal with this at all. I can just make it so that the object itself, when I apply changes to it, it triggers its own domain events, right? Then I have all the right behavior where these will only fire once that object has been saved to Entity Framework, because I have an interceptor there. And I don't have to I shouldn't actually have to explicitly deal with publishing domain events. If I want to use mediated notifications, that's fine, but domain events themselves specifically, I should be handled that way. And this could be a bit of a guess, right? So the challenge here now is what I need to do is make all these records, right? Identifier, assigned, previous. This should work. There should be no challenge to using identifier, title, description. Because now these will have the equality they need. Thank goodness for .NET 7, C# 7 coming around. Oh, .NET 7. Bringing with it these. I shouldn't break a lot of code doing this because these are all dealt with this way. And if this is still broken, then I give up. I don't understand how code works. And again, I'm using records here because of they do equality based upon the values, not on the reference. So that gives me that built-in flexibility. Whereas if I want to do a class, I have to implement the overrides. Otherwise, I'm going to get weird behavior. And I have to know about that because I can't force it. If I force it at the domain event level, then I have to do I have to implement it on the there as well. Okay, so that should mean that that planning item updated happens now. Everything should build. Oh. Why don't you get... Oh, derp. There you go. That helps. I hate when the computer informs me my knowledge is wrong. That's that. Oh, because I called it planning item identifier. I was explicit. It's the planning item created from ticket details. That's too verbose. So what we should do now So the way this works overall is when I add an item or change an item, I go through an API endpoint, right? I have an API endpoint for put to update. That will then call a command and a handler. It will validate the planning item. It will validate if there's any changes to the planning item. So again, this code is the guard. And then it will call the domain service to say, okay, now I actually do need to update you, by the way. Then when I go into the domain service, and the reason the domain service does this is because the domain service is updating lots of different things at once. So again, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not making the application layer do all of this because it's a little bit more involved. Again, I guard that the planning item was loaded because again, you could call this from different places. So I don't always know that the application has done this. And then I call the updates on the objects. Each of these methods actually verifies that things have changed. So they won't trigger the events if they haven't actually changed. And then when I call update, it saves that object back and then returns success. And now I remove that dependency there. So what I'm validating here is if I go into associated projects here, so for 11, which is this make the UI look awesome, we have 085 and 729, and our view should agree. The view contains the actual projects. 085 and 729 are planning and tenant management. So that's 1 and 2. So there's 1 and 2. Because they're being added at the same time, the IDs happen to align between the two projects. That is not guaranteed. These internal IDs are internal to the database that has them. So if I add story and save that, I should get to this event eventually. So I have 3 items attached. So now associated projects has 3 items, 22222628. Associated projects over here now has 11, 11, 11, right? 214, 216, 217. So they are now in line, they agree. If I remove one now, if this doesn't work now, I'm gonna have to give up and become a carpenter or something. Associated projects 3. Oh 085, 729, and 5B. The table has 085 and 729. So that was not a wasted exercise, but it was a frustrating one because it's the result is yielding the same. It's yielding the same result. Why is that loading 3 when there's 2 in the database? This is not caching. This is definitely a direct query. This is the current state. If I run it again, it will find 2 because it will actually pull. So that event there that's triggering that is in the notification outbox, right? So that's here. So that's this event that's been fired. It says, hey, this items, by the way, has been updated. Ah. Come on. Why would that be? So this spec, this repository, does the repository cache? So the repository in this instance is not your standard repository. It's actually a library by Dallas, and it sits on top and layers specifications on top of the data context. So I'm able to kind of create reusable specifications without actually having the queries directly in my code, which does keep that kind of clean, and I can name them appropriately. So it kind of, I've always wanted to, when I've written large link queries, etc., I've wanted to make them kind of methods or something, but because the way link works, you can't easily do that all the time. Or rather, link to entities. Specification. Add our specification. Caching. Enable cache. Right, I'm not caching these things, right? So this is that's a hooked in behavior. But it's like it's not the state is clearly correct in the associated projects, right? So the data model that I've changed is valid. So if I go to my entities planning item, I modify the associated projects of the planning item here. And then when I save back, because that's an associated object, it saves. And that's working fine. we've kind of gone through this before. This is both an aggregate and an entity kind of combined in terms of its behavior at this point. So it's not really ideal. It's going to get larger as well as I add more behavior. I just don't have a good answer for the design yet. I prefer this. This is working fine. So if that repository is holding on to things, then that's the problem. Most frustrating. Because what that'll do is that'll publish those records with the wrong projects or the duplicate projects. Actually, that would publish the fact that I've got 3 projects. So the view side would say, hey, you're associated with these 3 projects. But the actual data side would say you're associated with these 2. So now when I go to change that, it's going to add that project in. Or try and remove something that doesn't exist. I mean, it validates, so it won't remove things that shouldn't be removed, right? It's not going to... It's not gonna change the state of the data incorrectly on the save. It's just gonna look weird because the client doesn't tell you what it truly is. But I just don't understand why that would. Why is that loading 3 up? If caching isn't a default component of it's not in memory, it's pulling from the database. Planning item by identifier with requirements. So this is including the same things. Very strange. Most perturbing. Well, I'm open to suggestions if anyone has one as to why this is causing a problem. But I mean, it's cleaned this up a little bit. This behavior is better. I'm gonna have to go through the other events and make sure that they are. So in tenant management, again, my domain has events. These events have to be, if I make them records, it cleans everything up quite substantially. I'm also going to have to do one massive commit. I've kind of let the behavior of this change overtake me a little bit because I'm making sweeping changes to the application, and it's probably not the right way. Doing it this way, the records are immutable, so I can't just go changing these, which is good. I mean, it's an event. I shouldn't be changing it anyway, but yeah. It's a bit clearer. The intent is clearer. Yeah, I'm gonna have to work out why. Because the repository shouldn't cache it at all. That's not correct. That is not correct. But anyway. That at least guarantees the behavior, because again, that domain entity is at the root of everything. So if I don't change all the events in the system, everything else is going to be broken. These will be names. These will be where I've got explicit names somewhere. If anything. Yeah. Yeah, and that's because I'm not setting them now. See, and again, I'd put that's interesting. Tenant user is verified. Yeah. GUID tenant identifier. I clearly changed the GUID user identifier. I changed the behavior there a bit, hadn't I? What? What am I doing here? Where am I? Okay. Well, I must go. I've got work to start, unfortunately. So I'll fix this up a little bit. I'm going to continue on. If anyone's interested in the solution at all, if anyone cares, there is a Discord. I will probably post in there when I figure out the solution to this one, why this is happening. I'll be back tomorrow with more of this. Hopefully with a bit more progress on the UI side. We'll get these projects saving. We've got the assigned users. So tomorrow I might start working on some of the administrative stuff, building a user screen, an additional user screen. And yeah, working on there. If you're looking for more content that's better than this, and also focusing on design, One Line will be streaming later on today, I hope, because that's something to look forward to today. And I would highly recommend checking out One Line. But yeah, for now, we are going to go raid Sorcery, because that's where I'm going to go hang out for a bit. And Sorcery is a game developer, but I wouldn't say it was better, but different. Okay, it's we'll agree to disagree there. But have a great day, all. If I don't see you around Twitch, thank you very much for the raid, Naneth. If you're still here, very much appreciate it. We'll be looking out for your streams in the future. And yeah, I will see you all soon. Take care, all. Thank you very much.